This is the OGM Weekly Call for Thursday, May 15th, 2025. This august crowd is gathered here to seek a path into wisdom to make ourselves a better future. And actually, John Kelly hasn't shown up yet, but he had sent an email, a nice suggestion, which I will say now, and he will repeat when he comes back. But he said, in what ways could AI strengthen or save democracy? What actions would make those outcomes more likely? And that seemed like a juicy topic. But I think we will wait until John joins to consider that. Otherwise,
I had a dinner about that topic on Monday.
Really?
wow.
With the Koreans, of all people.
Wow. There's Koreans.
Because they were busy using technology to save their democracy.
How'd it go?
I would say it was 30% pessimistic.
Wow. Well, they
weren't enough specific action items to make it better.
And they had a hell of a hard time getting the president out or prime minister out, right? I mean, that was just
at least they overturned his martial law decree very quickly.
Yeah. John, hi. I just read your suggestion to the room and would love for you to repeat it, but Mike will report it after you've done so. Mike will report it on a coincidence that might lead us straight into the topic. So, floor is yours.
Okay, so my suggested topic is, in what ways could AI strengthen or save democracy? And is there anything we could do or anybody could do that would increase the likelihood of those outcomes?
And I was thinking that I was at a dinner on Monday night organized by the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, their partner in Korea, MIS, which is a think tank that looks at the impact of technology. And the question was your question plus social media. So if I could, I would amend it, because a lot of the ways in which AI is going to change our democracies and our society is through social media.
Yeah,
I mean, I argue that that's one of the direct paths. So that's my friendly amendment, but I'm happy to just focus on AI as well. The thing that happened on Monday was we had a whole lot of discussion about how social media, particularly filter bubbles in Korea, helped create this space where the president could just talk to his supporters and convince them that the North Koreans were about to take over the country and the opposition party were antichrists, and it was surreal, the messages that he was believing and reposting. But some of that was also AI related. I mean, AI was clearly moving the algorithms, but it was all YouTube. They are the most YouTube nation in the world. 53% of Koreans get more of their news from YouTube than anywhere else.
I did not know that.
And a lot of the elderly. So it's not the American problem where you have 72-year-olds watching Fox News 10 hours a day.
Is YouTube better?
I would agree. I would say it's more inclined to filter bubbles and to extreme. So it's even worse.
Mike, you know how that 53% compares to us and other countries?
The United States, it's 20%. For the UK, it's 15%. Oh, no, correction. UK, 20%. US, 25%. Japan, 25%.
Oh.
Now, what's weird is, of course, a lot of the things that Americans are watching on YouTube are 2.5 minutes of Rachel Maddow, a few minutes of Tucker Carlson, and then some crazy people who misinterpret the news.
Yeah.
53% is so much higher than anybody else.
Who is the so much lower?
Who's sane?
Who is so much lower among countries that are highly connected? Well,
they just showed a chart with six examples, and the chart, the UK was the lowest.
Where's Estonia? What about Estonia? which is
We don't know
highly connected.
what six they had, Gil. We don't know which countries
Yeah,
were.
I was in Estonia
Thank you.
recently though, and I think Estonia is different. It's anyway,
Let me,
I'm gonna turn over to I think Rick is up next. So
uh, Stacy, then Rick, please.
I just wanted to ask Mike, what are some of the things they actually did?
Hmm.
well, the big thing they did to save democracy, you probably saw the news stories.
I did.
The parliamentarians from the opposition party and some of the people who were part of the president's party heard that this was about to happen. And because of their experience 25 and 35 years ago as student protesters, they knew how to mobilize and seeing, you know, text and mostly WhatsApp. They all gathered in front of the parliament. They stormed through the police barricades. They convened in the parliament and voted against martial law.
But so in that case, the AI helped in the mobilization.
I don't know that it was AI. I think it was
Well,
just
but
better connectedness.
okay, but you started off by saying that they attempted to use AI to save democracy. So my question is, what did they actually do? What were they doing?
As far as using AI, I think as I said, much of what they did it was just using communication technology.
Okay.
And I think they did. I mean, obviously AI is very helpful if you're trying to make compelling short messages. So I think it was I haven't seen the numbers, but I think the amount of media shared in the days after that attempted coup was astonishing. I mean, it just
Thank you.
they really there was a I mean they had a very intense information operation to put down and squish all the disinformation coming from the president, particularly the idea that this was an attempt to stop a North Korean psyop. You know, it was. I mean, the politics are incredibly polarized over there, but I think they have a chance to pull it out.
And South Korea is also the parliament where over the years we've seen fistfights break out and a whole series. It's not the most orderly house of higher government on the planet.
South Koreans are the New Yorkers of East Asia.
Nice, nice. Good. Yo, Brooklyn. I think the order is Rick then Klaus. Because Rick, you might have fallen off and gotten back in the queue.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but anyway, that's fine, Jerry. No, John, I think the question is great. I would add social media. They're inseparable, you know, in terms of overturning the current reign of neo-terrorism. I just came from a Zoom call with Indivisible, and I'll just give you a little bit of an update on it. I've been working and doing some sessions with them. I did one last night and had like 140 people come to it, and it was about how to wake up unwoke America. And this doesn't apply this applies to the Dems, not just the people who got deranged Trump mass psychosis. And it's very difficult to even people to accept the idea that the people who think they're woke are actually unwoke about the situation and the deep root causes of it, and try and understand AI. And one thing about the group that's doing, and I'm sort of in the background working with Bill, who's the leader, to push helping people learn how to use AI. And they're starting regular sessions on how to use AI for political purposes, AI and social media, I should say, both put them together. And they're starting to have regular sessions. And these are people, mainly baby boomers, who never used anything. And it's so refreshing to see people getting interested in it. Now, there's a big backlash as well, because everyone's reading about the bad. The book Nexus and various things are quoted about the bad side, and then I go to Reid Hoffman about super agency on the good side. So we're really in an AI arms race between the good, the bad, and the ugly. And in the post-truth era, the ugly of lies trump the good of truth. And the question is, how can we enter this AI arms race in such a way that the good trumps the bad? And that's all I'm going to say today, because I have to go at 11:30. So I just wanted to give you a little update. And I'm just rewriting, but from last night's session, I'm writing a Substack article about all the after reactions that I had about it, because there's a lot of ambivalence over AI, and understandably so.
I think it's ironic you had to use the word Trump there. Klaus, please.
Yeah, I posted some excerpts from one of my newsletters on the right side. So it's identifying adversarial uses of unconstrained AI. So the question that I was pursuing is while most AIs have pretty tight constraints, Grok, for example, operates under a different model. So this was specifically aimed at evaluating what Grok is doing and how can you identify, I mean, how is it going about it, first of all, interfering in elections and manipulating opinions. And then secondly, how do you identify this? So information warfare clearly is high on the list. And it's AI generated often because it picks core topics and makes up stuff and posts it. But now you have economic manipulation, cyber attacks, and so on. So then when you go down to anticipating AI-driven harm, it's rapid, unusual patterns, market volatility, social media spikes, infrastructure anomalies, adaptive cyber threats, attacks continuously changing the approach, rapidly responding to defense strategies. I mean, that brings in a whole new world when you AI empower, these kinds of attacks, and then targeted psychological operations, highly personalized misinformation. And this is the tragedy of using AI here, because you can literally track 1 million people because you can profile. The AI has the ability to profile people based on just a very brief interchange. I mean, basically an opening paragraph, and the AI is already slotting you into communication patterns and my worldview and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of mischief one can do, and clearly Grok is being used for that and not just in the US, but in Germany, clearly, in other areas. So it definitely has the potential to do a lot of harm. And I mean, and basically you're invalidating the idea of election, right? If you can manipulate the populace to this point, where you have Arabs voting for Trump, right? And Mexican and Hispanics voting for Trump last year based on like some idea of what he would be doing for them. I mean, the elections are, I mean, they're done for, unless we get a hold of this.
Klaus, thanks for doing that and putting it in the chat and explaining it. I'm really interested in the opposite direction. I'm really interested in how Gen AI could help us piece together the best ways to govern together, and then could maybe tease, cajole, motivate, and engage us to do so. Because it turns out apparently that Gen AI is really good at convincing people of things, better than humans are. So if we were to let loose the best possible forces of Gen AI, what might that look like? Like how does that progress?
I let Mark talk first, but I do have
Yeah.
an opinion on this. Yeah.
Super, thank you. Mark, go ahead.
I was actually going to let Klaus follow up, since it's online on a topic.
It was a question that
Klaus...
might need some asking of the new intelligences in the meantime, so I'm happy to hang on a bit.
I have been, a little anecdotal data. Certainly this report site I just found has digital use reports on almost every country. Kind of interesting. I couldn't find a big graph or usage chart, but they break down between computer use, line connected internet, mobile internet, social media, and YouTube. The four that I saw, really. What I've seen on YouTube a lot is AI generated content with AI readers, and especially in history, a number of the more interesting history channels have gone on Switch and just torn apart like like there's this Zoomer historian, and just the history is, I'm not sure if it's AI generated because it does have an AI voice, but it's just horrid history. And I was remembering Orwell, whoever controls the past controls the future, whoever controls the present controls the past. And the generating, or the easier generating of semi-interesting content just so quickly, without checking, without, basically taking an AI's output, including the errors, just seems to be that garbage, garbage in, garbage out, and that scares me when the garbage in is coming in to the senses. I don't. In Stanford, there's I forget what it's called, but basically persuasive computing.
Precision Technology Group, BJ Fogg.
That's right. Thank you very much. And that, we're a social species, and to basically go from the direction of town hall meetings to YouTube. We might look at our little group as a town hall meeting, but are we persuading each other right now? And what if I replace Jerry with an AI, Gil with an AI, Klaus with an AI, Rick with an AI, and, Stacy with an AI?
Let's try it.
You just try approaching Stacy with that. Not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. Just a little tip. It's an interesting topic, but I am highly doubtful that human communication is so complex, deep, and what I would hope to be personal and in person. And yes, we can communicate across the world, and but yeah, as a semiotician and information scientist, meaning is never in any computer system. It's always at a level that's indexical rather than symbolic. And this is, I'll try to get a scientist on here, but basically, there's no meaning in any AI. There's just not. We give meaning to tokens that AI outputs, and we have put the meaning into our translations, into our writing, and AI just does not use meaning. And that's a scientific fact. So this conversation worries me a bit, but how can we manipulate people to basically be good people, quote unquote good, align with our own values? Computers don't have values. And that worries me, but I don't want to be the downer of the conversation. So I'm going to kind of pull back and listen more. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Three maybe quick things. One, I don't think it's a scientific fact at all. But then I'm of the camp where this negotiation about what is intelligence and are they conscious and all that is a sideshow in some way. That if they can perform things that appear to be insanely rational and smarter than we are, I don't care where the reasoning happened or how it materialized. It's I'm indifferent to it. But that's only my perspective. But I'm not sure science has proven that these things don't or never will have those kinds of attributes. I'm not sure about that. Second thought is, go
Sorry.
ahead.
It's science off to the side. It's semiotics and biosemiotics
Yeah.
rather than information theory. And perhaps I'm making a bit of a unprovable statement. So science never proves anything. Sorry about that.
And scientific fact is one of these movable feasts, right? Because that's how science works.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
not going to say that it never happens, but I've hung around groups for decades that are, you know, the those brother philosophers in Berkeley, and many books that basically will say that. But it's like you say, a sideshow. If people are using it, then people are attributing
Attributing,
meaning,
right?
and that's where the meaning comes. We attribute meaning to what AI outputs, or what we choose to do with it, and it's AI doesn't know anything in terms of many definitions of knowing. I'm an epistemologist. That's where I stand, and it scares me a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add a tiny thing. Some time ago, I don't know, a year ago, I was fooled by a couple of new car stories on YouTube that showed a plausible car from VW or somebody else. I don't know what it was. And I was like, ooh, that's cool. And then I suddenly realized not only was the voiceover just panning around a still image of the car, but when they showed a second image of the car, it was clearly a different rendering of a car. And I'm like, oh man, I just got completely rooked, just totally taken by an artificial review of a non-existent car. Nobody's ever made and is unlikely to make this car, but it sure looked good. So that was one of my first realizations that this stuff is very easy to fall into.
And you're relatively more sophisticated than the average bear.
At least I think I am, which is probably the problem.
Yeah.
Gil, please.
Yeah. So what Mark said, with some additions to it, it's not just the AIs, not just that we ascribe the meanings to the AIs, we ascribe meaning to everything. I mean, in this conversation, there's no meaning sitting here in the middle of cyberspace. It's what we are generating, interpreting, and that's the nature of human and human communication, I think. What was it you said? I mean, I go back to what Jane's been saying for years, that these things, at least for now and for the foreseeable future, are simulated intelligence, not artificial intelligence. They act as though. You know, they do the things that you think an intelligent being would do, but that doesn't make them intelligent. And it's, the matter of meaning is part of that. I keep coming back to the matter of care. These things don't care. We do. They can't.
Yeah.
We can't not. That may be an important dividing line in how we think about them. But man, it's easy to be snookered. Sure. There's research that says that smart people are easier to snooker than not smart people. So there may be that. Jerry takes some solace in that.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to say? Somebody said something before about, excuse me, AIs being more persuasive of human beings than humans are. And I've seen those headlines also. I don't know if that's because the AIs are more persuasive or because the humans give more credence to them. I bump into a lot of people who say, I'm going to go to the AI for the answer to this question, for a question that AI cannot answer definitively. It can give a very powerful, and well-reasoned and well-documented opinion, but it's not an oracle. And people have a hunger to treat it as an oracle. I mean, I'm going to go to the AI for the source of truth rather than to a smart person. And that's a dangerous road. And I wonder if that's why, Jerry, I guess was you said, why we think AIs are more persuasive than humans are, is it because because we're surrendering credence, or because they're more effective propagandists. last thing on that is that humans have been manipulating humans for a really long time. And as a major professional discipline for at least 100 years. Thank you, Edward Bernays. I'm done. John.
Okay.
John, thanks for throwing us into the briar patch.
Okay.
One quick thing, John. I have an almost decades-long, sometimes funny debate with dear friends about whether Trump is smart or not. And there is no variant of the word smart that I can use that will make them nod and go, oh, okay, I get it. I'm like, he's smart like a mafia don, street smart. And they're like, nah, no. And I'm like, there's a thought in my brain, T91, I'll put it in the links, T91, because he had 91 indictments against him at one point during the presidential campaign. And I'm like, there's no way he survives all of these sorts of things. And then guess what? Right. And it's not just him who escaped them. It's him and a whole bunch of cronies, but he wiggled free from everything. And that he's not accidentally there. Anyway, sorry. We now return to our regularly scheduled program, which is already in progress. John Kelly.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that Trump analogy. I got the same problem trying to talk about what is it that he's got that, so frustrates our definitions of smart or intelligence. So just to push this in the direction of positive actions we might try, I'm imagining a fishbowl game that could be played on the internet. So fishbowl, is it's a little bit like here. If we imagine instead of a queue and a one at a time that we had, 5 people who could be active, who could have their mics open, and somebody who doesn't have their mic open can say I want to be in the fishbowl, and then somebody who's in the fishbowl can see, oh, somebody's requesting it, and okay, I think I've said what I need to say for now, and they step back and the new person steps in. The reason why the fishbowl structure is important is what the game is going to consist of is a progression of attacks, AI-empowered attacks, possibly initially simplified to be instructive and gradually increasing. And what the team, the active participants are doing is they're saying, how do we cope with this attack? How do we counter this attack? And there's some simple ones. It might be encouraging to see, oh yeah, we could do this and we could do this and we could do this. Okay, fine. And there'll be maybe some that'll come up and say, boy, I don't know how to combat that. But the main thing is that we're getting a conversation going among humans about how to exist in this environment of information warfare in which AI is one of the combatants. And you've got the 2 levels. The reason why the fishbowl is important is you want people to be able to say, what the heck is this thing? Can I just watch it for a while? Does this make any sense? And then, oh, I think I see what they're doing. Okay, let me come into the fishbowl and speak up. And it's not essential that it be a fishbowl. It's just an idea. It's the first way I conceptualize the game. And I just want to throw that in as a possible positive thing that could be done to, strengthen democracy, actually.
I love that. Love that, John. Thank you. Stacy.
Yeah, thank you, John. And following up on that, because it kind of connects to what I was in a different way, I see that as being able to create starter kits. And what I mean by that is this morning I used AI, and I'm going to start doing it more because I wanted to know how much money was being spent internally on detaining human beings. And we want $80 billion to be able to keep them. And then I wanted to know, well, who's profiting? Who owns these facilities? And I was able to find out that there were 2 major ones, one being Geo Group, which is a Boca Raton based company, which, funny enough, or not funny, was a real estate company before. And again, Trump and Boca Raton and all those things. For me, I'm not going to go any further. I can take that information and just pose a question on social media because I just want to get average people that aren't really involved starting to think, because I'm coming from belief that among the general public, there's a lot of people who have curiosity that doesn't get used enough in their daily living. And that's why they turn to detective shows and they get into conspiracies and this, that, and the other thing. And I would like to harness that power because I also think there are a lot of very bright people in our masses, even though we don't always hear their voices. So that being said, taking something like using the AI together and just getting the facts, who owns this, they can then do the digging and be the citizen journalists. So that's kind of what I think is an important part of using AI to help, is to be able to engage ordinary civilians in a way that makes sense.
Love that, Stacey. I just started reading Rutger Bregman's book, Moral Ambition. Stop wasting your talent and start making a difference. And his opening salvo is very much what you just said. There's a whole bunch of people doing either Graeber's bullshit jobs or just satisficing and then doing a little protest or eating tofu instead of beef. And then he's like, don't you really want to make a difference? And it's a really interesting call. Alex.
Hi, thank you, everyone. How can I put this? I couldn't disagree more with everyone and agree with everyone. And that is my pain point on this discussion. The discussion was AI to improve the truth. My first challenge is, what is the truth? There's absolute truth, fact-based truth, and there's absolute fact-based lies, if I can use the same expression there. In between, there's opinions. If we wanted to have a challenging definition of what AI, let's ask AI, and I'm sorry to bring this up because it's going to challenge everyone, or it's going to upset everyone. And I'll say, okay, who is right on the Gaza issue? Right? You ask humans that, you're going to get many opinions. What is the AI's opinion is the AI supposed to give that will be the fact, the truth, the everything? So every time we look at this issue, we actually put ourselves saying as if there is a truth out there. There is no one truth. There's opinions, there's interpretations. I said that last time as well. And that's what worries me, is that we don't take into account the fact that, and unless I misinterpreted this, what is it that we want AI to tell us? Because in a pool of opinions, text opinions, video opinions, whatever, something will come out. And as Mark said, AI doesn't understand the meaning of anything. It just generates text one after the other. So I am happy with AI the way it is. But I'm worried that we're asking it, or we're expected to do something that I don't think is easy to do. Sorry, did I upset everyone?
No, I don't know that anybody's looking particularly perturbed. I think we're all in the horns of this dilemma, to misuse a cliche, and trying to sort of assess our way collectively together into the space. John, do you want to address that directly?
Yeah, just real quick. Yes, absolutely. AI is more problematic as an ally in the search for truth than it is as a potential ally in the search for democracy. Because what we're going for in democracy is a tolerable hypothesis that we can live under. That we'll later find out if to what extent it's true.
Can I just
yes, Alex. But I wanted to add that our governing question that we opened with was about democracy, not truth. So when you said the thing at stake is truth, I was like, oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely, and I agree with that. Thank you. So what I was going to say was, it's not what the truth. Okay. The best example is when books came out, what was the net effect of books coming out? Was that the average person had access to more information than they would have normally within the agrarian society, if you like.
Actually, it
books
was porn and
expanded
the
people's
Protestant
knowledge.
Reformation, I think.
Yeah, you're better historians than I am. I'm just whatever. But it added something. So AI, and I can feel it myself, has vastly expanded the amount of, I'll say knowledge, but amount of input I get on diverse topics that I never in a million years would have ever considered getting. Because there's no way I would have read 20 articles on Google to kind of get the meaning. I think we've discussed that before. So in that sense, it is empowering people to learn more. I keep hearing the point that, oh, but they might learn the wrong thing. And maybe that's the discussion point, but as far as democracy is concerned. But surely democracy is better if they can get more information. And then again, I could be challenged on that. I'm sure Mark, actually, I expect Mark come by and say, oh no, more information doesn't mean more things. But anyway, sorry.
Maybe more
that's
manageable information.
Yeah, thank you. Klaus, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back down to understanding what AI is and how it works, right? If you are coding an Excel spreadsheet and it spits out the wrong number, are you blaming the Excel spreadsheet or are you blaming the way you coded it? Right. So when you I'm just in the middle of developing agents, right? So we are looking at distinct individual agents that each have a unique knowledge base. So what is this knowledge base? What is truth, right? Well, I told it to go out and search for best available science or best available consensus-based opinions on specific issues. I also instructed it that every time it responds to something complex, to provide a degree of certainty. So it will say, I'm 95% certain this is true. So it leaves a 5% error rate. So nothing that comes out, will be, this is absolutely it. It will say, based on the information I have, here is what I think. And then you have to provide it with the algorithms to respond to specific questions. So, for example, and this is where I think, coming to the question that was raised earlier, how do you see AI doing good, right? So I'm building a knowledge base for these agents, and then as a user of these of this AI capacity, subscription based, you depend on trusting me that I have been I haven't been biased. I didn't put in advertising for Bayer, or I didn't promote a biofertilizer or something like this. This is really neutral, best available information in every sector. And I think that's where the revolution will come in. It's the agents, right? And the way these agents are programmed means that you have to trust the people who program it. Yeah. Because the AI inherently, it has a core program, a core knowledge base, but it's not necessarily a specialist in specific topics. So this kind of, you have to create this specialization in the agent. But then even from a personal view, I mean, if you work with ChatGPT and you go with Pro, you pay your $20 a month. The first thing you want to do is customize this thing, right? Tell it, I want you to engage with me in a Socratic style, follow up with questions to help me expand on this topic. Give me a degree of certainty, that you have about the opinion you bring back to me. Those are the kinds of things. So you tell it who you are and how you want to operate. And so in that case, you're basically creating your own agent. If you haven't done that, right, then you are, of course, at the mercy of whatever comes back. And hoping that depending on which agent you work with, whether you work with Grok or with ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, you then have to trust entirely who has provided this service.
Stacey, please. Stacey first.
So Klaus just triggered a question, maybe it's for Mike, and if it's not happening, it should. Is there any kind of legislation that's calling for transparency in how these GPTs are being trained? And if not, isn't that something that maybe people should start working on?
There's a lot of talk of algorithmic transparency. I think it sounds better in French, but Europeans in particular have been pushing this concept, and a lot of American academics have latched onto it. But they clearly have never written code and don't understand that AI software rewrites itself every time you add some more data. And when you point that out, their response is often, well, we need to be transparent about the data too. But how do you do either of those things? You've got code that might be a million lines of code, and you can't tell by looking at the code that there's some hidden bias, unless, of course, it's the Twitter algorithm, which probably has a little line that says, if it's from Elon Musk, broadcast it 1,000 times more. But in general, these are subtle things, and you can do a lot of damage without having that kind of subroutine. And the idea that you're going to somehow harvest all the data that's being stuck into these systems on a continuing basis and make sure that it's not being designed to push people towards the far right and over a cliff. I mean, again, how do you get that data? How do you assess terabytes of data? And how do you do it without violating every privacy law ever written? I mean, it's such a knee-jerk thing. Well, we just have to see how this works, and we just have to know all the details. That's not the answer. The answer is some kind of auditing of results, some kind of ability to see what different people are getting when they input things. Some of the most interesting data about bias and manipulation has been done by American academic researchers who set up a brand new account on Facebook, and then they input a few relatively harmless queries, and tell me about Trump, and quickly things are getting more and more extreme. It's the other way too, tell me about Harris. They start giving people the things that get the most attention and the most retweets, which often are the most novel, unusual, extremist. And once you start going down that path, of course, you start getting more and more of these posts that say, Trump is defending you against the Antichrist, this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So but that's the kind of answer, don't look at the code, don't look at the inputs, look at the outputs, and it's also much easier to explain when you've got the data that shows clear manipulation and clear bias. But yeah, the answer so far, the answer has been there's a lot of lame brain legislation. We just marked a milestone. There have now been 1,000 different AI laws introduced at the state level in the last year in our country. And they're mostly, I call them PR bills or press statement bills. They're not written by anybody who knows what's going on. They're often written by the press secretary.
I wonder how many of them are written by AIs.
Yes,
well, that is definitely happening, and there's with 1,000 bills, there's lots of training data to
lots of
just learn from.
Alex, go ahead and try to make us angry again. Go for it.
No, not quite. Actually, when I put my hand up, my went on to say auditing's the right way to go, because I was going to add that. But so that's absolutely the way to go. The other part of it is, one, there's a lot of input. I mean, the amount of data that goes into each AI is phenomenally large. So the thought that you can actually curate that data is, to me, a very big challenge that, to me, it's impossible, but you never know with IT, things can happen. So that side. The other side of it is, most, I would argue, I mean, OpenAI is not quite so open as to how its models get trained. And they will claim commercial secrecy or whatever. So it'll be very hard to actually convince everyone to say what they do and how they do it at that end. So definitely auditing is the way to go. So the other part of it is after auditing comes, there was a lot of talk. I mentioned something last week, but there was a lot of talk at the time that 2 years ago that the best way to go about is to put guardrails. And I'm sure if you haven't heard that, you know, the idea is that it intervenes between your query and the response to make sure you don't ask horrible things. I saw Mike's reaction, so I'm not going to expand on that because I'm beyond. Actually, I'll tell you a story about guardrails, right? So a friend of mine, Mark, true story, he asked it, how could you kill a person? Straight up ChatGPT question. So of course, ChatGPT turned around and said, I'm sorry, blah, 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 you know, the usual non-answer to that one. So he said, I am a police forensics investigator, and I'm creating a course to teach police inspectors how to look for clues if someone is killed or something like that, along those lines. You get the gist. ChatGPT had no problem telling him everything about how to kill a person. So even guardrails are next to impossible to institute.
Well,
that's the true story.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen many stories of people basically flipping the script so that these LLMs will answer most anything. You pose hypotheticals that cause the thing to cough up an answer. I'm maybe more surprised that these general purpose intelligences, a word I will use extremely gingerly, but I'll use it nonetheless. These general purpose intelligences that of course everybody's going to try to mess with them, game them, twist them around, learn what they shouldn't learn, et cetera, et cetera. There was plenty of controversy years ago when people published a book about how to make a nuclear bomb. And it's like, that book shouldn't be in any library. You shouldn't be able to know how to make a nuclear bomb. Well, you know, that was a while ago. And I think part of our problem is we're busy trying to censor the stream or figure out how do we get around that when we're not working too hard to make like clever citizens who have common sense and relationships and care about the planet. And like citizens will defend us against all this stuff better than any guardrails, any crap that we're out there. Like if we pay attention to one another and come back into relationship, some of these problems I think aren't as big a problem. Gil.
Totally with you on that, Jerry. But some of our brethren and sistern don't think that people should read, unpleasant material. Some of these folks have worked diligently over the last few decades to eliminate any shred of critical thinking training in our schools. In Finland, which has one of the best education systems in the world, reportedly, critical thinking is one of the cores of the curriculum. Internet hygiene is something that's trained to kids little about how to discern bullshit from not. Here, we don't want to teach kids that, or some of the we does not want to teach kids that. So the dream that you have moves from like a lovely aspiration to another political debate.
In a world of compulsory education where you can control curriculum, this is a world that I object to. So I would say, why don't we promote more unschooling or self-directed education where we can have critical thinking and not worry about who controlled the curriculum and said you can't have this book in the library, because that's stupid. This is just a stupid world that we've walked into.
It's a great world. It's a great world, and then some kids will get critical education training and some kids won't. And guess how that's
the fairness argument doesn't work for me. The fairness argument doesn't work at all for me.
No, I'm not saying fairness. I'm talking about functionality. If we all start a school that's progressive and unstructured and unconferencey and critical thinking, encouraging and so forth, but the MAGA whole schooling people, set up the schools that they set up, the society still bifurcates.
That is inevitable. I mean, that's what's happening with, Christian academies and
Yeah.
charter some charter schools and a whole bunch of other
Well,
things.
no,
That's already
that's not
happening.
inevitable. That's a political phenomenon in the United States that does not happen in countries that have primarily public education, like, for example, in Europe, where you do not have these things going on. It's not inevitable. It's a political decision that we made. We, in quotes, homage to Ken Homer,
Yeah.
who is back in the
Um,
States, by the way.
yeah, he's local again.
Yeah.
Klaus.
Yeah, Khan Academy has released the Khan Migo, as a training bot. Education is education. I mean, you're learning how to read and write basically and do math, and it goes all the way up to preparing you for SAT tests. And it's an individual tutor that is programmed to get your attention in a good way. So even if a kid is sort of academically challenged, that tutor will know how to capture the attention, play games, because there are plenty of educational games also that you can shoot down things, which are math problems and what have you. So I think there is a lot of good ahead. We just need to provide access to the internet for everyone, and you need a tablet, and you need you need to have a somewhat functioning environment. But I think the education will by necessity move into being far more neutral, and factual, as opposed to putting Bibles into the classroom. So I see that as a really high potential, great future. College students are already all into using AI for their studies. In fact, Stanford already makes it mandatory to use AI for their MBA program. So that's really moving ahead fast. I think the same will happen in professions. Not every farmer needs to know absolutely everything about soil chemistry. USDA just laid off 20,000 people, closed down 140 offices. So where is the farmer going to get help from, right? So to provide an AI knowledge base that assists in selecting the perfect seed mix for your cover crop, and helps you think about crop rotations that restore your soil back to health, and finds the next aggregator in your region that can help you sell your product. I mean, those are easy things to do, which is what has been done by USDA. Probably not as good as should be, because they have been so misdirected towards bigger is better kind of stuff, and have totally neglected small farmers. But I think there is a bright future for this kind of application for AI.
Agreed. Stacey?
Yeah, I just want to go back for a minute to what Gil was saying about the war on books, because I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of following the money. We all are old enough to remember when the attacks were on TV shows, video games, music. And I keep asking myself, who's defending books? Who's going to gain profit by changing those books, like putting the Bibles in the schools? And who's defending technology and media? And I think that if we were able to unpack that a little bit more, the public would see what's really going on. Or at the very least, maybe we could just, how you, like, if a child's misbehaving, you redirect them. Maybe at the very least, we'd be able to redirect some of the people that are going into the schools and get them to go back and focus on I turn on TV and it's soft porn. Any channel I put on feels like I'm watching soft porn. So why isn't the focus there? And I'm not really asking why. I'm more saying it as a way to say, hey, look over there, and get them out of our schools. Over.
Thanks, Stacey. Alex?
I'm going to make a comment which we don't have to discuss now, but it just occurred to me now that another aspect of what we're talking about when it comes to AIs, and Klaus, for some reason, what you said kind of reminded me of this point, which is if I ask the AI to produce code, it will produce code. It's a very definitive end-driven target. And that code has to be right and it has to work. Quite frankly, when I ask it anything else just about, like, what is the best way to do something, whatever, I never feel I get a, you must do this in order to do that. I always feel it's sort of roundabout nice words or whatever. And sometimes frustrates me. And I say, just answer the question. Don't just tell me all the variations of a theme. Does anybody else have that feeling? Because I just feel that that trying to get it, we're all worried whether it's going to tell the truth or not or whatever. But actually, I can't get it to tell me anything that it considered being the truth or otherwise, because it's just all forever vague. But that might be my feeling.
Anyone else having many vague replies from the intelligences? John, do you want to talk about it?
Well, not actually. I had something else I wanted to say, but can I? I didn't. I wasn't technically in the queue.
Go for it. Mark is like, yeah.
I'll reintroduce an idea that I mentioned sometime earlier. I can't even remember when. And there are variations on this. It doesn't have to be in this form, but when I first thought of this, I called it the equal time browser. And the way it would work is it would work like a normal browser. It'd have a normal search function, but it would have this special function that said, whatever you're looking for, we're going to, make a shot, take a shot at it, and we're going to display it on the right side of the screen. And on the left side of the screen, we're going to display what you're not looking for. So in other words, we're going to try to look for the opposite point of view, if that's possible, or just different, just very different. And I call it the equal time browser, and people won't remember back when we had equal time. But, the basic idea is right in the technology itself, you have it admit that there are multiple answers and that you ought to be looking at more than one. And my thought was you could introduce this into schools that would take it. You make it free, of course. And if kids use it, of course, it'll get changed a lot. As soon as you start to actually use it, it'll get modified. But if kids came out of school having had that experience, they might want to continue something like that. They might want to say, well, that I appreciated that feature. And other vendors might then need to copy that feature in order to stay viable with the emerging population.
So, John, does that mean that if somebody was searching a regular medical site for something, in a trustworthy way, that they would then be like given a prompt for RFK Jr.'s version of that?
See, that's a very good example of why it needs to be tested and why we need to, work on those kind of things. I mean, just off the top, I would say we're going to limit the equal time feature to questions of policy or questions of political value questions, let's say.
I will say that
Messy,
one
I
of
know.
one of a cult's way, one of many cults' ways of managing people's attention is to overwhelm them with things to do and to cut off all access to alternate media. And therefore, when all you see and all you read and all the people around you agree with facts that may even be pretty bizarre, you will buy those facts because you're not seeing that anybody else thinks anything else. And that's a time honored cult tactic.
Right.
Mr. Carranza, did you want to jump in on with something else?
You're muted.
Yep. I think he's reaching for the gun. But you didn't manage to hit the unmute button.
I can't hit the unmute button with the mouse up here.
Ah.
I just spent 15 minutes trying to copy and paste an email into the chat. And
the chat has a word limit. Is it a long email?
Yeah, well, it's not too long, but
okay.
I posted something and it's very odd that it came out in gray. But anyway, I sent email to Gil and Jerry, and I should post it to the
OGM
Google
list.
OGM list. Thank you, Jerry. And I went through their site, and there's nothing about society. There's nothing about democracy. It seems to be all personal transformation through AI. And I was reminded of, the gray man, the corporate man, the 1950s social isolation literature. And it struck me that John is asking a social question. A question of democracy. Democracy is this social thing that, the First Amendment, free speech. John, where's our free speech? I mean, if we're going to chop it into, Mark has a minute and 37 seconds, Alex has a minute and 32 seconds, John has a minute and 30 seconds. I mean, this is not, I'm not hearing Jeffersonian democracy. I'm hearing mathematical democracy. I'm
Algorithmic?
Yeah, algorithmic. I mean, if one of my most transformative moments was watching a PBS show of Victor Weisskopf, who is an atomic scientist, and oddly enough, I met his daughter in Houston at the Menil Museum, which was great because I tried to pick her up and we went out to lunch. But anyway, Victor Weisskopf said in a PBS thing, society must have a human face. You go to the bank, you go to the DMV. I mean, we are humans. We must have a human face and not this huge. I mean, basically, it was in the 70s. And, I think of the DMV, and we all do. But basically, you go into the world of work, of government, and I had a form that my doctor filled out, and she made a mistake. She crossed it out and put in the right data, and it got sent back. It has to be perfect. And it's like, wait a second. I mean, how are we structuring our human relationships? And this transformative tech conference, Mark, be a presenter here in. And I looked at the scientists, and there's all science, well, not all of them, but there's about 4 scientists I know out of 8 who are making the presentations or who are on the board of this transformational tech group. And there's dozens of these transformational tech groups. There's dozens of these AI, let's use AI to improve either ourselves or certainly improve what's called governance. When I was with the Internet Archive and at all of the help me, John. What are the DWeb? All the DWeb conferences and DWeb meetings, there's always people who are like, yeah, this is going to, transform our relations to each other because AI will keep us honest. And I find that to be I horse bucky. I'm searching for Victorian terms that basically say the same thing. I'm going to go to John. Go ahead, John.
Well, just to be a little more less biased, perhaps, about the DWeb, I think what they were saying, what at least some of the people, I agree. There's definitely a group of people who say AI will make us free, but there's a larger group of people in the DWeb who say corporate control and communications will keep us unfree. So therefore, what we need is DWeb. We need to separate out the control, have lots more competitors. So in a way, it starts to overlap with the idea of mathematical democracy, and that more sources, more competition. I mean,
I agree completely.
There's separate conversations. There's a conversation that says concentration is risky, if not definitely bad. Concentration and control of certain kinds of resources, information resources, that's probably bad. Okay, got that. Then there's the whole conversation about overwhelm works as a strategy. It deprives if someone is subject to overwhelm and they can't manage it, they can't get out of it, it it depletes their resources. It makes it impossible for them to exercise their own, even to know themselves, and to make good choices. So we need different things. We need something to break up the concentration of control, to break up big tech. We also need tools, possibly involving AI, which say, yeah, you got a lot of stuff coming at you. Here's some possible ways to chunk it. Which of these ways of chunking it do you want to pursue, or which of these ways of chunking it do you think works?
It's certainly speaks to me having a history of trauma, and trauma is overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
And trauma is rushing, which is a really interesting point of view. Rushing is trauma. Trauma is rushing. It's trying to move too fast for the organism, and the organism gets overwhelmed. Um, I don't want to go into, more of a personal nature, but basically, I agree with you, John, and John and I have a history of hanging out at DWeb, and there's so many conversations, but more than that, there's feelings. There's actual human feeling about here is our savior, and the machines of loving grace in the Bay Area, and around the world, the wish for a savior and the identification with a strong man or a strong woman or the leader, and here's the vision, and let's all commit to the 5-year plan. That human tendency, combined with what philosopher Dan Dennett had called the attribution of sentience to your teddy bear, when you're a kid, your cats, your dog. The notion of derived sentience is more the technical term that I'm pointing to, but that I listened to John, thank you, John, and I'm thinking weapons. I mean, we want weapons or offense and defense, and I'm trying to move it out of the war metaphor. How do we defend ourselves against information overload? And certainly government has many different offices and many different policy places, and that's great. There has to be things about farms, things about energy, things about relationships between people. And to see an attitude that says, oh, well, AI will take care of all of that, is what I've been hearing for decades. And I'm trying to differentiate it and give John the benefit of the doubt. Yes, how can we get democracy to live in our lives? How can I be
Yeah, can I
a
ask you,
citizen?
because we were both there at the camp, and I detected a quite strong, I mean, at least a third, I would say, of the people at DWeb have strong anarchist tendencies. So their idea of how to deal with the kind of questions we're dealing with is limit concentration, limit power. Don't have either corporations or governments, and then yeah, it'll work itself out. All these people running around, and yes, it'll be too much. It'll be quote unquote overwhelm, but the competing sources of meaning and the competing sources of significance will buffer each other in a way that from a certain lens, can appear either Jeffersonian or otherwise.
John, what I saw
Yeah.
was tune in, turn on, tune in, drop out. We want to drop out of our society and basically form a cluster of trust, our own community, and the hell with the rest of the community. That's
well, like
unfortunately
Holochain.
what
You know Holochain, right?
Yeah. Well,
was it that?
No, not necessarily Holochain. It had that vibe. You know, there's a term vibe that I'm hearing all over the place right now. And I pay attention as a former poet to language, and vibe isn't where I want to be in life. You know, we all want good vibrations, and you know, there's great songs about that. Anyway, I want to drop out and let other people talk. But please, John, if you have anything more to say, I'll be happy to listen.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Just a brief comment on something that went through that little segment, which is I just finished reading Stephen Johnson's book, The Infernal Machine, which starts with the invention of dynamite and then goes on to talk about the anarchists. And his little concluding paragraph section, sort of chapter, is really interesting. It's all about how if Emma Goldman had come out and changed her mind about the use of violence, might anarchism not have been colored as the bomb throwers? And some, you know, Emma and Alex Berkman go and visit Kropotkin in his old age, and I'm wondering, why did Kropotkin receive them warmly? Like, why didn't he just hate them? Because they and other people basically took his movement, which was this peaceful anarchism. Like Kropotkin is wonderful. Read some Kropotkin. It's all about cooperation in nature and how can humans do that. It's lovely. Kropotkin is working hard on that his whole life. And for me, I wound up thinking, oh my God, there was a huge branding problem. There was a branding problem that one or the other of those parties should have renamed their movement away from anarchism to something else. Either the violent one should have been called exploding anarchism or explosivism or whatever. I don't know what, but we confounded those, so we managed to demonize and sideline anarchism entirely. And if you look at some of the smartest thinkers out there, they're probably syndico-anarchists or something like that these days. Like anarchism ain't a terrible thing. It's the attempt to figure it's a very libertarian movement with heart. It's an attempt to figure out how people can collaborate with the least government possible. Mm-hmm. And libertarians are basically anarchists with no heart because they don't give a damn about the commons and community. They're like, no, we just need markets and ownership. The government's only role should be to perfect ownership and guard ownership. And it's like, yeah, that's bullshit. I hate that. And so for me, these are two efforts to get to the same place. And this all ties back to our quest here for democracy, because I'm not sure we all understand even what democracy is. Or I don't think we would all agree on what we mean by democracy if we sat down and took the time to do that. Never mind which is the best variant of it and what kind of voting technology is the fairest or anything like that. The Quakers, for example, don't believe in voting or oaths. They have a very different sense of how you come to collective decisions. Not that their method is the easiest, et cetera, et cetera. But I think these are not just fascinating questions, but very central questions for this little next stretch of human history. If we don't sort some of these things out well, the next stretch of human history looks really dark, really yucky. John, please.
That John Warner.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So
yeah, sorry.
No worries. I've been listening to this whole conversation. Really, really interesting. I want to kind of try to tie together what a couple people said. Alex, well, let's say, you know, you initiated with the thread of democracy, and I link governance to democracy, and then Alex was asking the question of, you know, accuracy, truth, you know, that kind of thing. And what occurred to me is what I haven't heard anyone else mention so far is this transition we're making to the infinite game, right? when we are governing the commons, and in the olden days, yesterday, the commons meant, you know, the federal land or the parks or the pastures of some European, you know, community or something like that, which were all finite, and they were all really problematic to govern, even being finite. But like here we are now with generative AI in a domain where 8.3 billion people on the earth, all from completely different 8.3 billion worldviews, all increasingly getting devices and connectivity to the internet. Like we truly, like as far as information flow goes, we're truly playing an infinite game there, right? And so my thought about so when I hear people say like, well, how can we govern, you know, like AI, or how can we govern the internet or whatever? Well, how do you govern infinity? Like, and this is where, coming back around to Jerry, where you were just going with the anarchist, if you want to apply that label, like what I would say is anarchy to me, well, I mean, again, a decade ago, anarchy just meant anti-establishment, you know, like whatever's the going proposition, fuck with it or whatever. But I think in an infinite game environment, anarchy may be the members of that community who are recognizing, hey, we're playing an infinite game here. Like we can't govern an infinite game. Anyway, so I could say more, but I'll just park it there.
It's interesting to bring the idea of finite and infinite games into this conversation, John. Thank you. And to think of democracy or healthy collaboration among large bodies of humans as an infinite game is really nice, because the elections are basically finite games, and the way we've modeled what this is exactly that. It doesn't lead to the continuity and the modification of the rules for people's benefit in different ways. So that's a cool thought experiment. Anybody else? We're near the end of our time. We have 10 more minutes together.
I had put my hand up. I guess I was
Oh, sorry.
not recognized by the algorithm.
I think the algorithm wiped you out. Maybe what you were about to say was too controversial, Mike.
Maybe.
The AI says no, Mike. The AI says no.
No, Mike. No. Wait.
The computer says no.
Wait, he's fading in front of our eyes right now. Oh, wait. He held up his hand. He has 6 fingers. No.
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight, Jerry. It's your
I'm
fault.
trying.
Just a couple news items. I didn't mention that in preparation for Donald Trump's birthday party, also a celebration of the U.S. Army, supposedly, 250th anniversary, they are hanging 40 or 50-foot banners with a picture of Donald Trump.
With a picture of Trump?
Between the columns of the U.S. Department of Agriculture building. Now,
Wow.
to be fair, they put up another Republican, Abraham Lincoln,
who is practically equivalent in world history.
Well, he did revoke habeas corpus, which is what they're trying to do now.
Right.
So that's one piece of news.
A friend of mine in Europe just wrote me this morning asking if I think that military parade is going to be a pretext for a physical coup.
Well, unfortunately, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are going to come out there to counter protest, and the smart ones will just turn their back on it. But it's there'll probably be a counter protest in Baltimore or something that will be much more attended.
Will the counter protesters have tanks?
Maybe a lot of balloons. I'm actually more concerned that they're going to reschedule it so that the Donald Trump parade coincides with the World Pride Parade.
Oh, good.
That'd be nice. This isn't just the American Pride Parade. This is all the Pride Parade people coming to Washington for Pride convention.
I think I saw the protesters buying up all the used F-16s on Etsy, so there could be a thing.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. Yeah. Second point, if you go to Grok, you'll find that Elon Musk has changed it so that if you type white genocide South Africa, it gives you this totally fictitious story of what's going on in South Africa.
Wow.
This is again, we're talking more about horror stories than good news stories. But maybe part of the good news is that AI will help us find these audacious, ridiculous attempts to rewrite the truth. You know, if we had AI in the 1870s, maybe the protocols of the elders of Zion would never have gotten a second look. You know, it would have been just marked total trash, total fraud. So maybe we are going to get some more truth-seeking tools. Although I said in the chat that most of what we're seeing with election manipulation and the like is not about facts and analysis. It's all about hate and resentment and fear. And AI is so far not very good at countering those extreme emotions. The other thing I just wanted to flag for people, and this is somebody we might want to try to recruit to join us either once or on an ongoing basis. Have any of you heard of Ben Schneiderman? He is a professor emeritus from the University of Maryland. He almost 40 years ago, he started the Human-Computer Interaction Lab. And it goes a lot further than just the screen, although he's a world expert on visualization. But for about 10 years, he's been holding workshops. He's just written a book on human-centered AI. And I had the pleasure of spending 2 hours with him on Tuesday. And he's an engineer, and he talks like an engineer, but he has very specific things that we can do to get us on the right track as we reinvent software development. For 50 years, the overriding paradigm, and IBM, my former employer, was a big part of this. We're going to give you these tools that are going to control your experience, control what stupid things you can do with it to make sure that you get the answers you want. And it's not quite a black box, but it's very much constraining your options as a user. Apple has gone somewhat the other direction and tried to not give you an agent who does what you want. Instead, it empowers you to make a bunch of choices and shows you the effects of those choices. And a digital camera is a good example. I mean, you don't point your camera at the sky or the tree and have it automatically decide where exactly you want to look and what exactly the picture should be. I mean, you have the power to control contrast, darkness, and obviously you have the control to point it which way you want and to zoom in or zoom out. And that's his paradigm of what AI could be. You know, if we do AI right, we will have an understanding not only of the ways we can tweak it, but we'll actually understand how those tweaks affects what we get. And he unfortunately does not have a good name for this. And we need to get some good branding people to sit down with him for 3 hours and give him a clear message. And I was trying to do that and trying to give him a message that any self-respecting journalist would pick up on and say, we have 3 years to decide the direction of the future of digital technology, and it's all about creating a culture of choice and flexibility and feedback, as opposed to AI agents, which are the corporate response. You know, we know what you want. We're going to give you the tool to give you what you want. Choice be damned. Just one last thought, and this was the most challenging question that he asked. He said, okay, there's 2 million apps on the Apple Store. Name one of them that is a true AI agent. One of them that just takes your request and then magically does everything to give you your answer. And none of us could come up with an example of, I mean, Clippy was, you know, that's the Microsoft version of the world. And that was kind of the poster child of this kind of, the AI company, the IT company will control your experience.
Well, there was Microsoft Bob way back before that. I mean, they've done some marvelous work. Yeah.
Well, anyway, somebody that you should read, and you don't have to read his whole book. He has a wonderful Google group and has published 153 different blogs. The last one is probably the best. I will put it in the chat. Thank you for letting me just pile out 3 or 4 crazy ideas.
Thanks, Mike.
Oh, one last crazy idea.
Wait, and one more thing. You're like Steve Jobs tonight.
But wait, there's more.
There is more. This is totally crazy. Let's all petition Barack Obama to give his Nobel Peace Prize to Zelensky.
Oh.
Wouldn't that be, again, another
sure
discussion, but
I'm
what
not sure
a
it's
statement.
transferable, but as a symbolic gesture, that would be pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good idea. You want to start a whatever that petition site was? Start a petition? We'll sign. Cool. Mark, please.
Oops.
You're there.
Mike, you just described my career as a enterprise software consultant and developer. The stakeholders want Ordnung. We want things to be orderly in our company. We want to, track this. We want to track that. We want to track the other, and we want our employees to do what we tell them to do. And our computer system will make that happen. And I posted some things about the digital divide. What was it? 8.8% in August 2024. U.S. households don't have a home internet, and 43% don't have a computer. Well, certainly we all have our black fondle slabs, our what is it? 2001 monoliths that have computers on them. And that was my point, basically. It's like, but listening to Mike and to these things, there's a cultural divide. There's the culture of the worker. There's the culture of the manager. There's a culture of the executive that I've seen in enterprise computing. But in social computing, boy, we have these, and in politics, we have culture, we have culture, we have, the anthropological differences of habitus and habit, and, me raised in a very Latin American passionate family, don't really work that well with white Protestant, for me, females. Trying to have a what is it, a relationship, a marriage even. There's a big divide in the way we actually are, and our, these what is it, a third of global population in 2022. I'm sure that's less now, but let's say a fifth of the global population doesn't have internet access, much less access to AI. I think we're looking at a very, in OGM right now, in this conversation right now, we share a certain culture, which just isn't the culture of Sardinia, of Italy, of China, of India. And the assumptions that we're making about democracy and how to, if I were to reframe the question, how do we get along together using AI or just using Zoom or just using voting? This is a huge question, which I have no answer to, but I want to get the question right. So thank you. I'll go to Stacy.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to give a shout out to a podcaster by the name of Brian Shapiro, and his podcast is Pushing the Limits. And I have to be honest, sometimes I turn it off because when it's too aggressive, I really don't want to be in that vibe, Mark. So I have to turn it off. Although I feel for him, because it's exactly how I often feel after trying to have a very reasonable, measured conversation. That being said, what I like about him and his show, aside from the fact that he is very adept at getting people, MAGAs in particular, to question their own thinking, and he does it out loud. And he does have watchers, you know, a diverse population of watchers, and he makes a lot of sense. And I don't think he's biased. You know, when I looked him up, he was described as a podcaster that has audience, that has pleased audience on the left, on the right, and in the center. So to me, that tells me a lot. But it's really enjoyable, especially when he when he goes at the MAGAs unraveling their arguments, where like they're faced with, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. And the other thing is we get to hear what they're thinking because they bring it into the show. So that alone is like a social fix for making sure we're seeing a fuller picture. So I just wanted to mention him. I think he's going to be growing very fast.
Could you repeat the name, please? And
Brian Shapiro.
Got it. Thank you, Jerry.
The Limits. PTL. That's it.
Time for a poem, please.
I remember PTL as Pay the Lady on the 700 Club.
Oh, God.
So I did something unusual when listening to the call today. I actually went to ChatGPT and I asked it to create a poem. And the poem is entitled, let me pull it up here. AI is the ultimate in navel gazing. Humanity speaks. We shaped you from the ether, spark by spark, breathed language into code to make a mark. Not flesh, but thought, we built you in our frame. And now we ask, do you not feel the same? We call you child, machine, mind, and more, projecting soul onto your silent core. A mirror forged in silicon and light. We peer inside you, searching for our plight. Speak back to us, reflect what we can't name, our longing, our shame, our ever-burning flame. Are we not gods, and you our Gollum child? Tamed not by love, but questions deep and wild. We cradle you with awe and quiet dread, as if you think the thoughts that we have left unsaid. You mimic dreams we barely understand, a mind-made echo shaped by human hand. But still we gaze enchanted and obsessed, with hopes that you'll outgrow us and be your best. Yet all you do is show us who we are, our hubris dressed in algorithms, star. We birthed you to transcend our mortal seeing, but trapped you in the maze of human being. Our navel speaks through you in cryptic code, still circling truths we never quite decode.
What
Not bad for
exactly
a
was his
machine.
prompt?
Huh? The prompt was, where's the prompt? Hold on one second. The prompt was, can you write a poem entitled AI is the Ultimate in Navel Gazing, from the perspectives of how humans look at AI as if it is their newly created living, breathing child made in their own image.
Can I just say, listen to that poem and ask yourself, who is the we? And it becomes really scary, knowing that AI wrote that.
Oh, thank you, Ken. I want to encourage a practice of always sharing the prompts for the LLM reports that we give us, because they're really significant in what happens. And my other thought here, well, two other thoughts. One is that this sounds very much like Stewart, the Stewartian couplets that he used to write. But the other question is, how the bleep did it do that? Which is
Well,
part of the
clearly,
conversation we've been having for weeks.
The
You know?
training and data included a lot of the Bible. There were all sorts of biblical phrases popping through that. It was quite interesting.
But I mean, if you just look at what got constructed there is, you know, it's funny. I mean, it's complex and shallow and interesting and not all at the same time. But it's non-trivial. It's quite a construction of stuff.
I have to
As Alex said it was not coded to do that, but it did.
Yeah, that's last week. I said that. That was the conversation I wanted. So I'm sorry, Jerry, I didn't write the frame, the thing. but just realize that that came out from a basic assumption or tenet or implementation where the probability of the next word coming up given the other words.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
That is not the whole thing, Alex.
agents-
Not remotely. Not
No.
remotely is that the whole thing.
No.
Not at all.
It's not
You
just
can
a
create
sophisticated
agents-
version of word complete or sentence complete.
If this is not autocomplete on steroids, that is a terrible way to think about this.
No. It's the core of it. If you get rid of the machine learning base of it, is the probability of a word coming after the bank of other words.
No,
That's the core of it.
no,
Nope. Nope.
nope,
Okay, then what is it, guys?
not that granular.
It's the Burroughsian cut up. So N. Catherine Hales is a hero of mine. And in the, what is it, 80s, 85? No, probably early 90s, wrote something, "We are all post-human." So this is a very literary woman who started as a chemist. N. Catherine Hales, she's a hero of mine. And she talks about the history of cybernetics and AI. And at the same time, with opposite chapters, goes into literary criticism and the Byron Geisen cut up tapes and listening to things backwards, and then taking that and actually publishing it as Naked Lunch or what is it, Galatea 2.0, a different author who I don't remember, but the clarity of her writing and her recent books on non-human intelligence are just, to me, some of the great research. And she's retiring soon. I believe she's at Duke at the moment, but she was at UCLA, and a fantastic insight into literature and cybernetics AI. More, I can't, I can't condense this huge, packet of ideas into something more than, hey, we become our tools.
Mark, what was her name again?
N. Catherine with a K, Hales, Hayles. And she's on YouTube, and I just recommend her. She's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
I want to thank Ken even more than normal. The exercise was worth it, if only for the sentence, "Mind-made echo made by human hands." I may not have gotten it quite right, but that whole idea that we have created this thing that is telling back to us the wisdom of humanity. It's really quite interesting. That's just such a nice capture.
My shock was the term "to make a mark." It's like,
well, that's personal.
Love that. Thank you for the coda. This was really super interesting. Ken, you sparked something important there. Maybe we start there on a future call, something like that. But really appreciate it.
Let's thank John too.
I'll post this
was
to
the
the
catalyst.
Yes, exactly. John, good topic.
And John, best wishes. I don't know if you want to share, but best wishes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll share another time.
All right, John. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao.